Hey guys, what is up? It is me, Mitch Crafter, and today I'm doing a reaction video to a video titled The Cycle Frontier is Back. And I'm not really sure what to expect from this. I'm not sure if what exactly it means, and I'm just gonna go in, see what this guy's talking about, see what he has to say. It's been a while. If you don't know The Cycle Frontier, it's like it got banned in 2022, or it wasn't banned, it was taken down because it just wasn't making enough money. But it's been getting so much praise as of lately because the fan base actually decided that they want it back. On YouTube, you could see a bunch of people like saying how they want it back and bring back the Cycle Frontier. So I think the devs of the Cycle Frontier are finally realizing this, and they're noticing that they could probably bring it back if they do it the right way and if they clean up the game a little bit. With that being said, let's get straight into the video, see what this guy is talking about, and see the points that he makes.
There's a revival project going around for what I would have to call one of my favorite live service games of all time, that the studio who developed it, called Yager, doesn't want you to know about. The game's been dead for years, and just recently I got tipped off that for the last 4 months there's been a small group of hardcore fans trying to bring the game back from the dead, but the official developers really aren't too happy with it.
Yeah, this being said, like, I feel like ever since it actually got banned, people have been trying to, bring it back, bring attention to it, but it's just never gotten the attention that it's needed. I think with, the break that the Cycle Frontier has had, I feel like it would bring more attention back. So many people would think back how good the game actually was and they would want to revisit it, and it would get all of this attention. I really think it's a possibility for the game to be revived.
In fact, they're so upset that apparently they're going as far as banning anybody who even remotely mentions it on the official Discord server, even though the game's been dead since 2023. And
I don't understand why Jaeger Studios does what it does, because these are people, these are the Psycho Frontier fan base, and Jaeger Studios is just pushing them away and making it seem like what they're doing is wrong, that supporting the Psycho Frontier, a game that they love, is wrong, and I don't understand why the devs would do that. It doesn't make sense to me.
the interesting thing is that we've seen this sort of scenario play out with other dead games in the past, and usually there's a few different outcomes that can happen. So let's go ahead and try to get into the game and talk about what exactly happened to the Cycle Frontier. But just in case you've never heard of the Cycle Frontier, because it didn't really exactly break any records in terms of player count or anything, it was a PvPvE extraction shooter that was set in a futuristic sci-fi setting on the planet Fortuna 3. Your main hub was the Prospect Station, where players would go in and prepare before each raid. You had different factions to take quests from and gain reputation with them by completing missions, and the more you leveled up your reputation with the factions, the higher tier weapons and gear you could unlock and bring into the game. It was pretty easy to understand, highly addictive to consume, because you would go down to Fortuna 3 to loot the specific items that you need for each of your quests. You go against the hostile environment, you go against the alien mobs, and you have to watch out for other players in the map, and it's an extraction shooter, so you have to extract with your loot.
The quest base of the Cycle Frontier, I feel like, was on the more solid side than a lot of other games, because I felt like, when you were playing the Cycle Frontier, you really felt inclined to do the quests more, and some of the quests, you actually felt a little bit of fulfillment from completing, because you get it done, you get money from it, you get to upgrade your faction, and a lot of other games the quests are a lot less rewarding in a sense, because in Fortnite, you level up, you do quests, you just get the battle pass, XP, and a few cool skins, maybe, you know V-Bucks, but other than that, there's not much else to it. In the Cycle Frontier, I feel like doing quests, right? It actually made the player feel like they were making a lot of progress in the game itself, and that's what I really appreciated about the quest system.
Never really been the best at extraction shooters, and usually I put in a couple of hours here and there, but the Cycle Frontier was the one that I put in probably the most amount of hours into. It was one of the very few games out there that actually managed to pull off that futuristic vibe and aesthetic properly, while also having that sense of tenseness, that tense feeling that you get when you're playing an extraction shooter.
Yeah, that's the thing. I feel like the Cycle Frontier, at least for me, it captured the best extraction shooter experience, because some guns, you felt inclined not to lose. You felt like you needed to keep all the loot that you had because you wanted to keep building. In a lot of other games, I feel like it doesn't matter as much because the stakes aren't as high. But in the Cycle Frontier, you go in with a good set of loot. It could take a lot of effort to get that back.
Almost made you feel like you were watching an alien horror movie, like the Alien movies or Prometheus or anything like that. The Cycle Frontier
No other games capture the overall environment that the Cycle Frontier brought out, right? When I was playing the Cycle Frontier, the environment had its own vibe, futuristic, very, very original, very different vibe to it.
though was a lot more welcoming and easier to pick up, compared to other extraction shooters that are out there. Maybe that's why people loved it so much, because it's a genre that prides itself in being intentionally difficult and sometimes even tedious with its game mechanics, but in terms of accessibility and ease of and sometimes even tedious with its game mechanics, but in terms of accessibility and ease of learning how to play the game and how everything works, the Cycle Frontier was definitely one of the best for newcomers to the genre. And I think that this is the reason why so many people actually resonated with the Cycle Frontier, and why most likely there's currently a project trying to bring the game back from the dead. But this fan revival that we're talking about, there's definitely some problems that they have to deal with. So when fans try to revive a game like the Cycle Frontier, for example, it's not always about the nostalgic side of things. There's a whole conversation going around game preservation and not wanting these sort of experiences to end up being lost media. And I totally understand that from the gamer's perspective of wanting to keep the game alive and being able to revisit it whenever the hell you want, but it's also Jaeger's copyright protected IP that they have full legal rights to sit on and do absolutely nothing with.
Yeah, this is what pisses me off. Jaeger Studios, they made this game, they made this audience for the game. They totally just kill off the player base and the game itself. And now when people try to recreate it and make it better, they're just totally shutting it down legally. Why do that? Like, if you're not gonna work on your game, then why are you gonna beat other people down for trying to do what you couldn't?
And that's where the tension lies here, because maybe they're not ready to give up on it yet, maybe they're working on their own official revival, or they just have those assets on reserve in case they want to build something completely new. The point is that this is just a pretty tricky topic to navigate. I've actually heard from a few live service developers that have worked on now dead games that one of the things that frustrates them the most, like the absolute most frustrating thing about this, wasn't that the game they were working on ended up being a commercial failure and the studio got shut down or anything like that. It's the fact that they have nothing to show their kids 10 to 20 years from now about all the cool things that they were working on. It's not like the older pieces of media, like you can get a copy of Echo the Dolphin for the Sega Dreamcast, for example, right? A game from a failed console that you can still pick up and show to your kids to this day. You can physically tell them, hey, I made this, come check it out. Yeah, that doesn't happen with live service and other sort of experiences that are only available through online servers. Usually once the developers pull the plug for good, it's gone forever. There are some cases, like for example with Spellbreak, where they released the game out to the public for people to be able to host their own games. After the official version shut down, they were like, here's the game, go play it, remember it, enjoy it for as long as you can. But unfortunately, when it comes to live service games, once it's dead, it's gone for good. Think about like Knockout City, Rumbleverse, Hyperscape, XDefi, and more recently Concord. Live service gaming has a pretty depressing future when you think about it, and I see why people would want to find a way to still be able to log into their favorite dead games, even if it's just to walk around and remember all the good times that they had. So the fan revival project that we're talking about is called The Cycle Reborn. I went over to the community Discord server and I saw that it was getting hundreds of new users almost every single day. That clearly tells me that there's a massive interest in wanting to bring this game back to life. I remember it had a pretty dedicated fan base back in the day because of how unique the Cycle Frontier was, and from what I could see from just browsing around in the server, people are raving about this game. They're excited to drop back down into Fortuna 3 as a prospector, and from what I could dig up, the project is being handled by just a handful of volunteers who already managed to get a working single player mode in just 4 months, and they also have a timeline of having multiplayer be added later this year too.
Yeah, the fact that they got single player working is just absolutely wild. Like, you could just go wherever you want on the map, do whatever you want, and you don't even have to worry about like players or anything. That's something that I actually do wish you could do in the regular Cycle Frontier. I wish there were single player modes, that way you weren't always facing the stress groups of sweaty players always chasing you down, trying to kill you, get your loot, you know, because that always pisses me off.
Too. But one important thing to mention is that the reason they're calling themselves volunteers on this project and aren't actively trying to sell it isn't just because they're doing it for the love of the game or, and, you know, because they don't really need any money or something. It's because I don't think they want to make the situation way worse from what it already is, you know? I'm not saying that it's a bad thing that they're working on the Cycle Reborn, but a fan revival project like this one always operates under muddy waters because of the whole legality of the situation, right?
Yeah, that's a large issue right now because even if they manage to make a multiplayer version, how are they actually going to do it legally? Because there's no way that Jaeger Studios is going to let that slide. And I'm just like really concerned about what they're going to be able to do about it, you know?
Because technically they don't have permission to do this from Jaeger, the studio who created the Cycle Frontier, but at the same time, at least up to this point, Jaeger hasn't sent any cease and desist letters, they haven't tried to get the project shut down or anything, other than just silencing people who are talking about it on the official The Cycle Frontier Discord server. So the developers of the Cycle Frontier are actively aware that this is happening, but they haven't pulled the trigger and done anything about it yet. So the developers of the Cycle Reborn are pretty much just betting on the off chance that Jaeger won't do anything to try to stop the project and just let them coexist in peace.
But that's basically it. The rest of the video is just him actually playing this recoded version of the Cycle Frontier. I actually have my own clip of somebody from the Discord playing it and showing me how it worked a little bit more, so I'm gonna get into that right now. And basically the game is almost exactly to how it was when they shut it down. They even have the dungeons, they have almost everything fully developed, but they're still working on a few things because of course it's not going to be perfect. They're basically just taking coding from the original game and trying to put it back together the best they can. And soon there'll actually be a multiplayer mode that you'll be able to play with other people. I'm kind of curious how that's going to work, but I'm really excited to see how that goes.
Off the planet. But as you see now, yeah, so now there's evacs and everything. So they've grown.
Yeah, they're just like digging into things that like trying to properly add them back. Do they have like the dungeons or anything yet, or are those still in development? Yep. Oh, nice.
The dungeons are in development. The forge is working. Let's see, the forge, the drills, everything is working. The only thing that is not working at the moment is PvP or multiplayer. So it's just straight up a solo looter shooter type of thing. They even have even a loot spawns.
As you could see, the game is basically exactly how they left it. The only difference being is that there aren't currently any players to have PvP with yet, which they will be adding in whatever time span they could get that into the game by. That's basically it for my review on the current situation of the Cycle Frontier. I'm really excited to see where it goes from here. This guy even showed me his stash. He showed me all of his weapons. There were even a few weapons that I've never seen before that were, I don't even remember what he said about them, but they were somehow part of the code and the game, and he was able to have them. But that's it for the video today. I hope you guys enjoyed, and let's see where this goes. And as always, see you in the next one.